Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today I am joined by Olin Schumacher from Few True Seeds in Brandon. Olin, thank you so much for filling in today, pinch hitting.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That looks like a beautiful spot that you've got out there, man. Tell us what your living situation. I'm sorry I described it as off-grid too. I heard regenerative agriculture, and I just started making assumptions.
Sure, well, that's the dream. With the less waste, the better. So this is my hempstead here, or my current living situation. I've got the greenhouse in the back. I run a couple indoor tents, and I produce seed here on site. And of course, we're moving into a facility where we can expand those type of operations, not only to provide seed, but a couple different kinds of simple CBD products and some other products that are kind of geared towards helping people maintain homeostasis in the body.
How much land do you have out there?
This small plot here where I currently have the hempstead is just a small little corner. But the new place in Brandon has 10 acres there, and we're doing some clearing, getting ready to erect a barn, and this greenhouse will be attached to the barn over there. As well as some growing space, some larger space. But for producing seed, you really don't need a whole lot of space, which is kind of nice. I grew up here in Vermont. My father is very much a minimalist type of person, and I very much take after him. I've spent most of my time in Vermont. Went to school here in Vermont at Castleton University, where I studied digital media and did a lot of stuff with video, multiple camera editing, a lot of photography. So a lot of that has kind of circled back again into what I'm doing now here in the digital age, kind of connecting these two spheres of plant medicine and the digital information age, shall we say.
Are you growing anything else up there besides what I can see behind you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our primary focus at this time is taking a lot of the CBD varieties that we've been working on as my personal hobby, as well as before that, the way I got into cannabis really was through landrace preservation, trying to find old world type cannabis seeds, and in the days of forums, when there were real community forums on the internet that shared the seeds, and Mycotech, both places that I was deeply involved in for cultivating mushrooms and for trading seeds. I ended up collecting a lot of landrace and old world genetics. So I got into cannabis by trying to preserve those, because a lot of the new lineages are beginning to become very much inbred, and not only that, but catering towards very high THC, whereas the cannabis plant produces a whole range of different cannabinoids, terpenes, and effects that have essentially been bred out because of heavy THC.
Yeah, can I interject there? What happens? Yeah. What happens when a plant is inbred on that level?
Well, my concern is that we're losing diversity. We're trying to preserve diversity not only in seed, but in medicine and in culture. So my concern with that would be that a lot of these land races are being lost to time, that the cannabinoids that they have in their genetics are being worked out, forgotten, and that a lot of that will be lost. So it's mostly for genetic diversity purposes, but So yeah, and I got into CBD after doing a lot of that preservation work, and so we're working now on squaring away a lot of the CBD strains that that I've collected and or bred myself, and then producing feminized seed for people. As the medicinal market opens up here in Vermont, will end up expanding into some of the THC dominant varieties, mixed ratio varieties for that market as well, pending we get a license coming up next year. So
is the end goal out there just to be totally off grid?
Well, the end goal for us, for the company, I think is foremost education, I think, now. Because I think that's the most important aspect, not just for cannabis, but for medicinal mushrooms, for a lot of these things that can promote well-being and health personally. You know, we have this idea that to get well, we need to go see someone else. And I'd like to be able to abolish that in one small way. And for me, the personal experience of researching and being able to communicate to people these fascinating facts about homeopathic medicine is very gratifying. So I think that's the journey of the company. Me personally, I just want to be able to make enough money to live and to, and to do something I really enjoy. It is the bottom line.
So you're one of the first, well, I guess my last guest there, Ben Wilcox, talked about seeds a little bit. He said he had done some seeds, but it seems like this is kind of your thing. And I was hoping that you could really explain the process of how you create cannabis seeds, how you get them, how you perfect them, how you, get rid of the ones you don't want, things of that nature.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have been doing it for some time. I think the first time I started breeding cannabis seed was 2015 or so. So, I'm still a young guy. It's not that long, but it's something I'm very passionate about. So I guess to start, you have to get your seed from somewhere. Every seed company gets their seed from somewhere else. So whether that's going out to a physical location and collecting the seed, typically, most people just get them from another seed company. Usually, if you only have a couple seed, you would expand the seed. So you do a run, you cross-pollinate, say you have 6 plants, you cross-pollinate all of those together. You call that open pollination. There's no selection at all. And from those 6 plants, you get 300 seeds. From those 300, from those 300 seeds, you want to plant maybe 100. The more you plant, the better selection you have the more you have to select from, basically. So you grow out those, a large amount of seed. You can select from those plants based on their phenotype, which are things that you can observe: the smell, the structure of the plant, how vigorous it is, how quickly it germinated, number of trichomes, if you're looking that closely, and even up to color matters to some people, leaf color. There's a number of different phenotype expressions that you can select from. And then typically once I've selected the phenotypes that I find desirable, I'll narrow them down, from 100 down to, say, 10 or so. And of that selection, I'll typically try to send away as many as I can for analysis, and that includes the males. Males, of course, are selected based on the same phenotype stuff, the smell, how much pollen they drop, how quickly it is, whether it's early flower characteristics or etc. Any of those characteristics. Once they're sent in for the lab results, you get things back like the terpene expression, the cannabinoids that are expressed in that certain plant, and you can get results for flavonoids, although typically people don't go to that extent. They're the lesser of the concern in terms of breeding. So you have the phenotypes you selected, and now you have the genotypes, and you'll select from those based on what you desire out of the plant. For breeding CBD in hemp, you're looking for something that's below the federal legal threshold for THC. That defines it as hemp. Typically the widest or the highest CBD concentration. Although, if you're looking for highest CBD concentration, typically that would be something you're breeding for extraction, whereas I'm starting to lean towards providing stuff that is more flavorful, that smells nice, that's early finishing, stuff for people at home, and stuff that's easy to grow and that's very appealing for the market and the consumer, not just for people that are extracting for CBD.
Can you tell us, I would talk to me like I'm dumb about this in detail, like I'm dumb, about the process of creating feminized seeds?
Sure, yeah. Now, I guess I should start with the fact that cannabis is very unique in the fact that it can express both female, male, and hermaphroditic plants within its genotype, and I don't know of any other plants that can do that. I'd have to double check. I don't believe it's the only one, but it's very unique in that fact. So it naturally, in conditions where a female plant is stressed, doesn't think that it's going to get pollinated by a male, it'll produce its own male flowers and pollinates itself, creating a feminized seed. So this happens naturally in the environment. And that feminized seed will drop, of course, giving that plant another year to receive pollen from a male donor. So it kind of it's a strategy for survival for the plant.
So you're stressing the plant out to get it to do what you want?
Yes. Now, there are multiple ways of creating feminized seed, and the most effective way is to do it with heavy metals. And the combination that I use is sodium thiosulfate solution, and it basically is very effective at stressing the plant to the point that it produces a lot of male flowers. And so that's done in a contained space, typically with just a single donor female that's been stressed out and produces pollen. And the offspring will produce all feminized seed, up to 99% feminized seed, and will carry the characteristics of that donor plant as well.
How do you know that the seed you've produced is going to be a good seed? Is it kind of just, you got to put it in the ground and hope for the best?
Yep. Now, Vermont state seed law requires that you, on the package, you say when the seed was tested, what the germination rate was, so that there's intent of transparency, of course. It's
what are you testing the seed for?
Whether or not it's producing 100% of the female that you want from that seed, or if it's if it's regular seed, that it's expressing the cross that you made under those conditions. For someone who's doing open pollination in their backyard, they don't know whether the guy down the street pollinated their seed. So obviously it would not be ethical to sell seed like that online if it's not done in a very contained space. So we're testing for that. We test about 100 seeds, make sure the germination rate is correct, make sure that they do well outdoors. Most of the stuff we breed for is for outdoor use.
Tell us about that. You mentioned that earlier. What is
Sure.
the entourage effect?
So the entourage effect, is not specific to cannabis, but has been used. The entourage effect and full spectrum have been used widely in the CBD industry to describe whole plant extract, essentially, and it's very kind of loosely defined. For a full spectrum product can be anywhere from CO2 extracted CBD that does not contain waxes, lipids, chlorophyll, etc., the heavier compounds. So it's like a clearer consistency extract, all the way up to ethanol, which extracts a much wider range of compounds. So it's a bit of a spectrum in terms of the definition, what you can claim to be full spectrum. Of course, there's no rules for that. But when I was working with Vermont Pure CBD, our ideology was that because ethanol extracts the widest array of compounds from the plant, a whole plant extract, that should be what we call full spectrum. In terms of the entourage effect, specifically for cannabis, that would be the interactions of THC with CBD, the interactions of any of those cannabinoids with terpenoids, with flavonoids, with oils that are either put in the product or naturally occurring in the plant, including chlorophyll, which is good for digestion, including waxes, which have a lot of benefits for digestion as well. So all those things working together to create a synergistic effect. Now that applies to all plant medicine. We have a tendency culturally and as humanity to try to find the very essence of things. So we're always breaking things apart, and then a pharmaceutical typically contains one single ingredient. In terms of plant medicine, it's shown over and over again that the wide array of compounds in any given plant, the whole plant extract is always more effective.
So a little bit more of that benefit of diversity.
Absolutely, yeah, and it has to do with the way our body, how one chemical will affect another. The greatest instance of that, of course, is the interaction between THC and CBD. We'll, of course, segue right into the endocannabinoid system with that. The endocannabinoid system, of course, unlike the digestive system, which is a single track and is, you can say, here's the digestive system, it's made up of this organ. The endocannabinoid system is kind of segmented throughout the entire body, and CB1 receptors are located on mostly the central nervous system, the brain, but also occur on a lot of organs. And CB2 receptors are more catered towards immune defense. So you find them more in the immunological systems, liver, pancreas, a lot in the lower systems of the body. So those receptors attach to cannabinoids, and cannabinoids are not exclusive to cannabis by any means. Our body produces natural cannabinoids, I'm not going to pronounce it right. Adenamide. Adenamide and AEA are the two prominent ones. Our body produces them naturally, and they attach to these receptors and regulate the functions of the body so that we can maintain a healthy state of being, or homeostasis, at all times. So our immune system is often thrown out of its normal state of well-being in instances of fight or flight, if you're stressed out, if you're not sleeping correctly, and cannabinoids help bring the body back to a natural and healthy state. So our body does this naturally. There are also cannabinoids in lots of food. There's a cannabinoid in echinacea that's very useful. There's caryophyllene, which is a terpene, but also a cannabinoid, binds to cannabinoid receptors or within that cannabinoid system. THC and anandamide, or AEA rather, are the two that I can think of that actually directly bind to CB1 and CB2 receptors. So they directly antagonize the endocannabinoid system, which is part of the reason why you smoke THC, it directly binds to CB1 receptors. You have a distinct feeling. Anandamide, which is responsible for the runner's high, also directly antagonizes CB1 receptors. So there's a distinct reaction from endocannabinoid receptors binding to those type of cannabinoids. There are other parts of the endocannabinoid system that are kind of peripheral. For example, CBD does not bind to either CB1 or CB2 receptors. They bind to an allosteric site on the neuron and affect how CB1 and CB2 receptors interpret cannabinoids. So it's within that same system, but they don't actually bind to the receptors themselves. CBD actually binds to a TPR1 vanilloid receptor, which is the same receptor that capsaicin binds to from peppers. So in that way, CBD can actually affect the way THC affects the body. So it actually can suppress, some of the effects that THC has, paranoia.
So it's the Narcan of weed.
Sure, yeah, in ways, yeah, absolutely. And there are other, peripheral interactions within the endocannabinoid system that lead to that entourage type effect. So, pure THC can be very overstimulating. And
especially if you eat it.
Sure, absolutely. And actually, the overstimulation of the endocannabinoid system can be an issue in terms of homeostasis. So it's not just about cannabinoids in general being effective for maintaining balance in the body. It's about how do each individual cannabinoid and or terpene or flavonoid or these other things interact with the endocannabinoid system, how they work together to create an overall effect.